Kathy Sierra. But I'm pleased to say that this talk will be entirely her own, talking about Government 2.0, architecting for collaboration. So I'll hand over to Tara.
So Mike's right. Hans Rosling actually makes statistics sexy, which is not an easy thing to do. So I recommend staying around for him highly. So I've had the great pleasure of spending this last week in Wellington and hanging out with a lot of local startups and entrepreneurs here, as well as many of you. And I can't tell you how lovely it has been. And I learned something last night. Tena kutu katoa, is that right? So I've been learning a little bit more, and I've tried to incorporate a little bit of the Maori into my presentation, so I really hope that I get it right. If I don't, you're going to have to come and scold me afterwards. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Tara Hunt. I live in San Francisco, but I am a Canadian. So I also have a great affinity to New Zealanders, knowing we have a lot in common, very much. So I'm one half of a company called Citizen Agency, as Mike said. We work with startups and basically bring them open source principles into their business practices, as well as help them connect to their community. Pretty much I shy away from the 2.0 brand, but I think it is a useful framework, and especially in this case. And when Mike gave me this keynote to sit down and create, and this is the first time that I'm going to be actually giving it, I got really excited because the parallels between what Web 2.0 is and where government could go are really exciting food for thought. I'm not at all trained in any sort of politics, but in this case, I think there may be some things that government services can definitely learn from the 2.0 world, the loose structure. And I also have a belief that everyone is basically good. So the framework. Everybody heard of the Web 2.0 term? A show of hands for those who have. So we've got a pretty savvy crew here. This is Tim O'Reilly's talking about the birth of Web 2.0. And basically, he's talking about the difference between, what happened back in the first boom compared to now. And you heard Lawrence Lessig talk about this, where Web 1.0 was really about being read-only and top-down, whereas Web 2.0 is definitely about the read-write web and being bottom-up. So this means that everybody can produce content, and everybody has a voice online. So some of the core tenets of Web 2.0 are the web as a platform. So this means, platforms like we think about PC and Mac and mobile phones, et cetera, but also platforms that power business and new industries to come up. The long tail. Who's read Chris Anderson's book, The Long Tail? A few of you. Basically, the idea that we're not this homogenous group of people, that we have many unique features, and we're very many unique people in the world, and that makes up most of what's online. It makes up what's most of in the world. Data being the next Intel inside. Now this is a problem that this is the one that I have a bit of a problem with as far as assertion, because it means that she who owns the data wins, and I'm not really about who's winning here, except for when it comes to the customer. Users add value. Everybody's heard the statement, user-generated content. It makes me shudder. I don't know who else it makes shudder in the audience, but user-generated content doesn't quite capture the amazing things that people are producing online and the way that people are participating and getting really excited about where the world is going. Network effects by default, basically using these sites to affect participation. It is very much about community. It is very much about people interacting with one another. And going back to the idea of the web as a platform, it connects human beings to share. Some rights reserved. Who heard Lawrence Lessig's talk? Yeah, so if you haven't, I'm going to go over this a little bit later on. But basically, IP protection really limits the reuse and experimentation of content. So, you know, there are some new models coming out through this Web 2.0 idea. The perpetual beta, we are releasing on a regular basis. We're always in beta. We never have a finished product. We are constantly evolving human beings, and I think that's a really exciting thing to be part of. It's also very chaotic, and it doesn't feel as solid as it used to be. Cooperate, don't control. We need to start taking on a word we call co-opetition. So starting looking at how we work with our competitors as collaborators, and also collaborating, being open and transparent with our audience. And finally, software above the level of a single device. So this is pretty self-explanatory, that people look at your content on mobile phones, they look at it through various different browsers, they look at it through PCs, and various other different ways, to SMS sometimes even. So how does this relate to Government 2.0, really? How does this relate back to government services? And I'm sure a lot of you already have been talking about this and have an idea about this where you're working. But I'm going to propose, I think, some fairly radical and some fairly controversial ideas about that. So these are my core tenets, which I'll be going over, of what Government 2.0 is. So basically, the government as my springboard. As a constituent, as a citizen of any country, the government becomes my springboard for being popular, or for being successful. The long, diverse tail of citizens, data is tricky. Going to the edges, the citizen community, some rights reserved, evolution as an ongoing process, trust, which is a really important point, and government on the go. So let's start then with the government as my springboard. Government services as a platform. So to explain platforms a little bit more, they're enablers between either two parties or the user and her experience. So if you start to think about this in the terms of what government can be, you can start to roll out the different possibilities. And here's just a few of them. So a government can be an enabler between, two citizens, between a citizen and a service provider, between a researcher and her information, a citizen and a public servant, a citizen and her information, an experience with the government, and many, many more things. So when you start to think about that, you can start to think about how you can be that enabler. And in order to start to think about how you can be that enabler, there's some guidelines that I think can really be taken from a lot of the Web 2.0 companies that are out there as how you can become the best kind of platform possible. So who's heard of, Firefox, right? Who uses Firefox? Excellent, wonderful. So Firefox, and one of the powerful things about Firefox, in the beginning it was that it wasn't Microsoft, but now, and I think a lot of people really got empowered by the fact that you can put plugins into Firefox and really personalize it to be your own. But you don't have to deal with other people's plugins. You don't have to deal with a whole bunch of clutter in your browser that suits somebody else's needs. So it's very modular and extensible. And I think a lot of really great platforms like Firefox, like WordPress, which is an amazing blogging platform, allows you to really personalize it to be powered for yourself. Number two, you add a secure layer. So this is really important when it comes to government data. Secure layers is what I think people are really going to be looking to the government services for. And PayPal and VeriSign prove the model that creating a secure layer can be a really, really, really powerful tool. PayPal is pretty much ubiquitous in North America. I'm not sure, is there a different service that's used here at all that provides that? But yeah, and VeriSign, of course, the trusted VeriSign logo on sites often makes people feel a lot safer. Leveraging the network to create promotional opportunities for users. I did find out about TradeMe while I've been here, which is your equivalent to eBay, which is awesome. And very much what these sites do is they create a platform for individual, independent business people to be able to come in and use that platform as a tool to promote their sales of their products so that they're not dispersed too far out and wide. And what these companies do, like Craigslist and TradeMe, is they do the advertising, they do the marketing, they drive the people to the site to buy your wares, and you pay them a small fee off of each sale. I think that's very, very empowering. Creating interoperability and accessibility. So microformats, another show of hands. Anybody know or use microformats? Oh, that's awesome. We've got a really very savvy crowd here. That makes me happy. So we work a lot on, this is a lot of our volunteer time goes to spreading the word of microformats. And for those of you that don't know what they are, basically they're really useful ways to mark up HTML simply in your pages so that other sites and other, applications and readers can tell what's in that page. So an address will be marked up like an address, and an event will be marked up like an event, for instance. So rather than having to go and use APIs, we call it scrape-APIs, where you can just go and scrape the data from the web page and present it somewhere else in a very meaningful way. And enabling symbiotic relationships. So P2P networks, I love how they work. The more you give, the better you receive. So very much creating that middle layer that that rewards people that give more into a system is really powerful. So some other points are that the best platforms also have multiple on-ramps and off-ramps. So we'll be talking a little bit about this at the end when I'm going to be explaining the various different transmogrified ways that people read data. So Flickr and Twitter are very great examples of this. Twitter, for those of you who don't know, it's fairly new, but it's growing like wildfire. It's as a group SMS, what am I doing right now? Service that's really simple but has so many abilities for people to have on-ramps and off-ramps so people can access it through their phone via SMS, through the web, through several different desktop applications, but you can also pull the data off and watch it in various different ways. And as we know, Flickr was one of the first that really released a really powerful API that you could upload your photos in many, many different ways, as well as display them in many, many different ways all over the web, which really, instead of the old model of having everybody come to your website, the whole sticky eyeball model of Web 1.0, we're allowing content to be distributed widely, and it's really a very powerful thing, like through widgets, etc. Using the data to enhance user experience, attention data, which I've talked about a little bit throughout my other talks here, but attention data can be something that's really powerful, and I'm really, really excited about the fact that Google just actually released to anybody who is a Google sign-up that you can take a look at your search history. I don't know how far back they go, but I can click on any day and take a look at what my search strings were. It's really interesting to be able to turn the data around and say, okay, we are recording this, we're enhancing our services, but now here it is, here's the data for you. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what that means as well as the empowering users through releasing your data back. And Last.fm and Amazon, as you know, Amazon, when you search for books, when you buy books, they start to get better and better at recommending future books. Damn them. Spawn or boost new industries. So Blogger definitely boosted a whole new industry, and blogging tools really, really amazing. How much money, how many careers are launched, how many sites are entirely changing, how many things came out of just these simple blogging platforms, and YouTube as well, where we are seeing television stations online. We're seeing a whole change in media. It's not only boosting new industries, but it's disrupting old industries, which I think is a really, really interesting phenomena. And finally, do one thing extremely well and invisibly. You are the useful sidekick to your constituents. You're not you're not front and center. And I think Google does an amazing job of that. You can buy, you know, the Google Mini, and you can use the search, you know, anywhere, and it does one thing well, and then built from there. So as far as takeaway homework for you to do on becoming a platform, here are some questions for you to ask yourself. Is how can your organization be a platform? How can you take these lessons, look at all of the different, these are what make awesome platforms, and apply it to what you're doing in your government services organization? And how can you enable and ignite industries to be built? I mean, I don't know if government wants to really be totally disruptive, although I totally welcome you to be that way. But definitely igniting new industries would be something very exciting, especially when you have such, I just met last night a whole bunch of technology and entrepreneurs that are doing amazing, amazing things, and they're going to Silicon Valley right now to get funding because they can't get it here. And, well, you know, they're being listened to in Silicon Valley because what they're doing is pretty cool and disruptive. So that's something to keep in mind. And are you enabling or are you controlling? So number 2, the long, diverse tail of citizens. So New Zealand, as I have had the pleasure of knowing for this last week, is an incredibly diverse country. And I am so very impressed at how well the diversity in the mosaic is handled here. I can't imagine, on top of handling the various diverse cultures whose interests, you know, are, I think, pretty well balanced. I mean, compared to my experience being raised in Canada, you guys do an amazing job of it. So on top of that, the fact that people are also starting to become, you know, really, really outspoken. And I've got a little video to show you that you might enjoy here. So maybe it'll make up for poor Mike's not being able to show his.
No one would have believed in the closing years of the 20th century that our most popular media were being watched in a new way by a force that was quietly gathering strength. With blind confidence, we considered them our own, our audience, our subscribers, our cuddly couch potatoes. With infinite complacency, we blithely segmented and sold them to advertisers. We learned to shape their habits, mold their desires, and give them the illusion of infinite choice. Yet from their side of the screen, with envious eyes, they studied us. And bit by bit, they learned and linked and drew their plans against us, wielding weapons we ourselves provided. And then, early in the 21st century, came the great unraveling. We offered free choice, but all they heard was free. We devised more powerful, more complete, more feature-rich software, but they preferred to grow their own. They pounced, and they blogged, and they blew the house down. The world we knew was forever disintermediated, whatever that means. They have tasted power, and there are a lot more of them than there are of us. High inside our glass towers, our greatest minds prepare to respond.
Well, can't we just start blogging back at them?
Well, yeah, but where's the money in that?
Brilliant. One of the people, Peter Hirschberg, who was one of the people behind that video, was the founder of Technorati, a really great blog search engine. So the ideas behind, for those of you who haven't read Chris Anderson's book, these are the forces of the long tail. Basically, what's happened is we've democratized the tools of production. We've democratized the means of distribution, and where the opportunity now lies is where we connect supply and demand. So basically, the democratizing production, we have, less expensive video cameras, all sorts of editing software on our desktops. Any one of us can be a producer. Any one of us can put our voices out there, our opinions out there. This is not really the place for government services to be. However, individuals that work within government services, absolutely, but not government services position. Now, as far as democratizing distribution, the aggregators, the eBays, the Trade Me's, the iTunes, that sort of thing, that's an okay place for you to be, but I would actually rather see the government services being able to enable more long-tail aggregators to be born out of New Zealand, because I think that's going to be a really powerful position for your future technology businesses. But the best place, of course, for government services to be is in connecting supply and demand, being the long-tail sort of filters. And, Google and Technorati and various different recommendation services do this well, too. But as going back to the whole platform idea, there are ways in which you can connect supply and demand and really assist your producers here in New Zealand. So I did a little bit of a case study of this. I took a look around when Mike gave me a sort of a series of who was going to be here. I took a look around at some of the sites, found some amazing stuff out there, and definitely one of my very favorites. And is anybody here from the history, New Zealand history? Okay, well then I can say anything that I want. But no, it's a beautiful site, really amazing archives, easy to search through, really fantastic history there. As a person coming to New Zealand, it was really, really useful. But then I started to think, what if I was a New Zealand citizen? What if I was somebody whose family had been here through generations? What if I had stories myself? What if I was a researcher at a university and this was my subject area? How do I upload my reports on this? What if there are inaccuracies, something that should be expanded on? How do I do that? How do I do that on this site? What if I have amazing photographs that were passed down to me through my grandparents? Tagging stories, bookmarking stories, putting them in a way that I can go refer back to them later on for maybe my school report if I'm a student. And can I build slideshows and timelines, etc.? Is there an API available so that I can, if I'm a blogger who's really interested in New Zealand history, can I start to create amazing, beautiful visualizations of New Zealand history and really take my passions and put them out there? Unfortunately, there's no way to currently do this because there is a process in which you submit. And it's a small bottleneck of people that have to go through and curate this stuff. So out of curiosity, I did this Flickr search for New Zealand history, and it came up with 748 photos of Flickr history. Now, not every one of them was like amazing, but there were quite a few really cool photos in there. Maori history turns up 148 photos, and actually there were some amazing photos in there. And then there's countless New Zealand blogs about history, about politics, about people's lives as they're unfolding right now in New Zealand. People are really excited to show how much they love their country and how much they want to see the New Zealand pride and the history get out there. How can you help them do this? David Weinberger, who was one of the authors of the Clue Train Manifesto, once said, we're writing our histories one blog post at a time. And I really, really love that quote because it really democratizes the idea of history. And I think we're totally at a time where we need to exploit that, personally. So onto this section where data is tricky. So you hold the ultimate intel inside. Like the government, next to Google, I guess the government has more data on us than anyone. And as we become more and more connected online, basically, we become more and more aware of the power of our data. Now, I don't know if any of you remember the AOL blunder from last year. Was anybody cognizant of that? So what that did, and what happened basically, is AOL released their search records. So you can basically piece together what people were searching for, and usually people search for their own names, so you can piece together who they are and what they're searching for. A lot of people's lives were turned into turmoil, and thank goodness I've never used the AOL search engine. But this really brought the issue to bear of what is being recorded, who is listening to what we're doing online, and where is that data going? How is it really benefiting us, and wouldn't we like to get our hands on it? So, you know, Hans Rosling, as Mike said, is going to be talking later about how powerful data can be, and you know, I really love the idea that you know, data in the hands of many, if we start to trust, can become a really powerful thing. And Hans will talk a lot about this, and he does a much better job than I could ever. But now the eyes basically are turning towards government services, and this is happening as well in the U.S., and we're working with an organization called the Sunlight Foundation. And it's not around services, but around political data and what people are taking as far as donations and what they're voting on, and trying to match these things up. And people are really excited to see more into what the government's doing. We basically need to balance. We need to start to bring the data back into the control of the individuals that are creating it. So why don't we have easy access to our medical files? And what about our kids' school records? Our own driving records? You know, how about the fact that we can anybody can pay $9.95 in the U.S. to put in somebody's information, get their social security number, and find out everything about them as far as their credit history goes. But we can't even access our own personal medical data and histories. So a case study on health records. So I took a look at this basically, and I started to think about you know, it's not just a nice to have, it ends up being in many cases, a life and death situation. So health professionals basically, and what I've heard is in New Zealand, and I know around the world a similar thing happens, they've determined that the record does not belong to the patient. It's the doctor, pharmacist, dentist's records. You have no right to your record provided in an open format so you can manage your health in a holistic manner. So imagine that you've moved cities many times in your life and had many interactions with many different health officials over that period. I don't know about you, but I don't until it becomes a crisis time, I don't really think about how I'm leaving behind this trail of data that isn't a nice long history that I can refer to. But say we found a new adverse drug reaction given to children 25 years ago, or in my case, 35 years ago. As a child, you might not know if your mother gave it to you. And you or your health agent basically need access to your past medical history to see if you need help. So if number one is true, if the fact is that we don't have access to our health records, then how can you achieve number two? How can you get that information? It's going to take a lot of work to go back, and you know, I don't know about you, but that becomes a deterrent for a lot of people. And what happens is this becomes, in this case, and in many cases like this, a life and death matter, not just a nice to have. And so in the nice to have scenario, just imagine what we can do. I know that personally as a mother, that being able to access week after week my son's progress in school without having to call his teachers and try to track them down would be so amazing, and I could do a much better job as a mother. So number four, going to the edges for feedback. So we've been doing this, government census data, and I still think it's really quite important to do this because it pulls in a really wide picture, and it does answer certain questions. And from what I understand, your census system is really awesome here. But this is kind of a 1.0 way of thinking, and we need to add another layer to this, and that's starting to listen and learn from our constituents. And so how to go to the edges on this, how to do this, here are just a few suggestions just from my position in like the Web 2.0 world is customer service. And this is one of the things that we teach a lot of our clients, because it doesn't seem to be an intuitive thing that you would take the customer service records and bring it into, the feedback marketing data collection to understand where you should go from here. These two departments seem always separate. I'm not sure how it is here, but if it is that way, you need to align those two things together. Fill your RSS readers. Who here reads blogs? Okay, you all should be reading them because there are lots and lots of New Zealand bloggers, and listen to what their concerns are. What makes them happy? What concerns them? What totally makes them anxious? What makes them happy? It's amazing the kind of data you'll find out, and then you also get to know them a little bit better and really start to empathize a lot better. Start collecting attention data. So I talked a little bit about attention data before. Watch how people behave on your site, behave with your products. And involve the public and not focus groups in planning. And I'm going to show you a little example of this in just a bit, which is really powerful. And be transparent and ask for feedback. What we do when we design a new product is we upload, as we're designing it, the screenshots to Flickr, and we tag them screenshot. And a lot of people watch screenshots. A lot of design geeks love to watch screenshots and give a lot of great feedback on what we're doing, that things aren't flowing or understandable here and there. And learn how to respond to feedback productively, definitely. You don't always have to say yes, but definitely respond. So this is my favorite part of the section, because this is sort of my bread and butter, is the community stuff. Now, there's already a community, and there are many communities in New Zealand, but what we need to do is we need to start building relationships to them. And I came across this amazing Maori proverb that goes, what's the most important thing in the world? The people, the people, the people. And that tells me you have a really great foundation for building relationships. I've talked about, for any of you that have been in my past talks, I've been talking about Bar Camp, and I've been promising and promising to show a little bit more. Well, finally I'm going to show you one of the worldwide global communities that we work on, and this was shot at the bar camps in San Francisco, almost a year anniversary after the first one.
Bar camp was a response to boot camp, which is an event by O'Reilly where they invite like some of their best friends to come in for the weekend and just kind of hang out and, geek out essentially for the weekend. And we decided we can do that too. We kind of make this up as you go. So like, we don't have like a preset schedule. Like when you show up, this is the schedule. You actually set the schedule when you get there.
We start with an empty program grid the whole day, and we fill out the different slots. Everyone just fills out whatever they want to talk about, picks the slot, and goes. And the whole thing kind of organically evolved.
No matter where you are in the world, you can run your own bar camp. So you just look at the wiki and you go, oh, well, they did this and this and this, and I'm going to do the same.
We'll take geeks of all kinds. You got to be geek of some kind, though. I mean, seriously.
In certain cities, like in Toronto and New York and Bangalore, where we've been, the bar camp actually started entire communities. I didn't think there was a geek community in Toronto. I left there and thought, well, maybe 1 or 2 people. Well, there's 400 people that gather on a regular basis in Toronto. Who knew? And this is what Bar Camp does.
There's self-organized sessions that come together where people sort of will talk about something that they're passionate about or that they're good at or they know something about, and essentially have a conversation about it with other people.
Being able to be around people with a variety of skills, interests, knowledge, and an environment where you can really, for me, this is my experience, really be able to discuss any project, any initiatives, brainstorm, get new ideas, bounce off each other.
And I think the strength of the internet really is the strength of community. And so, I mean, there are a lot of geeks here, but there are a lot of people who aren't coders, like myself. There's video people, there's food people, there's marketing people, I'm sure, and companies do want to get in on it, but I think companies are also waking up, realizing that if they embrace the community and help share the resources they have with the community, then the community will embrace them.
People with passion, idea, creativity, excitement, energy, and they need to be, just a little bit supported with little things like having a place to gather in order to be able to better connect with each other and stuff, in order to prosper and to make great things happen.
The 10 months since the first Bar Camp, there have been now, I think this is the 31st or the 32nd Bar Camp that's happened around the world, which is pretty amazing. And we've been involved in the organization of 2.
We, the geeks, hereby declare that we have the means to do it ourselves. So from this point forward, we are not employee 965362 or 463871. We're talented and sought-after individuals who can and will find the means to break free of your cubicles and ivory towers. We don't give a damn if you have the attention of 10 billion sticky eyeballs. We don't give a shit about sticky eyeballs. We give a shit about people. We're independent, empowered, and fucking engaged.
So since that video that was produced, and it's now not even a year after that, this always makes me, there's been over 150 bar camps worldwide. People all over the world see this and they say, yeah, we can do this. We can organize our own bar camp. And what's happened is communities have really emerged strongly. And we're seeing communities in India and Australia, and France and London and all over Canada and all over the U.S. come up where we thought all of this activity was really the entrepreneurs, the people with spirit were only happening in Silicon Valley, but it's not true. People with passion reside all over the world, and it's things like this where people gather and they start to realize that they can do it themselves, that they have the power to change things, that really becomes really inspirational, and it's spreading like a virus. And I talked to some people last night, so watch it hit New Zealand. So where does government services fit into this? Is, we need to approach service viewing the public not as a recipient, but more of a partner in these cases. And government services are the platform that enables more of these projects to grow and be born in a country as forward-thinking as New Zealand. And this is an amazing, amazing country. And so I have a little case study where I'll just show you another video here where this is happening in Toronto, where Bar Camp has invaded the municipal government, and it's pretty amazing.
Back inside to the newsroom. All right, well, it may be cold outside, but some TTC riders braved the weather to go to camp. Melissa Grello met up with them at the Gladstone Hotel today to find out what they hope to do to improve the Better Way.
You've heard of summer camp, boot camp, but transit camp?
Transit camp is an opportunity to get a whole bunch of people together who are really creative in one place for a day and ask them to solve a difficult problem. In this case, how can we help the TTC make their website better?
Next set of photos are from the original TTC documents.
Those creative people include designers, visual artists, tech geeks, and bloggers who all met online.
Well, I think what's pretty interesting is that a lot of people got online on blogs, and they really kind of came together and came up with an idea to have this event. And you see something go from the internet to an actual person-to-person conference that's happening here in Toronto.
Ideas are flying not only about the TTC's website, but also about photography, music, and visual art, all making the Better Way even better. Now, you won't hear any of these people talking about what they don't like about the TTC. Organizers say complainers are not allowed.
This is not a complaints line, it's a solutions playground. So everyone who signed up on the website actually agreed to a pledge today that they were going to keep it a positive environment. And it's been fantastic.
So positive that representatives of the TTC took notes.
When we started to redesign the website, we put that on hold until we could actually do more of the consulting with the blogging community, because they're the online community. It makes sense. They know what they're talking about.
If you've got fresh ideas on how to make the TTC an even better way, or if you'd like to find out what was discussed at today's transit camp, log on to our website, citynews.ca. From Transit Central at Gladstone Hotel, I'm Melissa Grello, City.
So I encourage you to check out transitcamp.org, but also to understand that this went back to the municipal government in Toronto, and what happened was this caused such a buzz, and the fact that this wasn't government organized, this was citizen organized, and the government officials showed up. So it was straight from the bar camp community going, okay, well, this is great in the geek community, but let's make some actual change here in our community. And the TTC officials showed up, and there was such a buzz, and so many great things came out of it, amazing stuff, that they took it back to City Hall. Now they're doing what's called Open Cities at the end of June, and if any of you have a chance to be able to fly over to Toronto, I encourage it greatly. So June 22nd to 24th, I think it is, and they're doing it municipal-wide, and many different cities surrounding are sending in officials from their cities to see how they can spread the same sort of event to their cities. So, food for thought. So, those of you that heard Larry talk about IP, even those of you that haven't, I'm going to go quickly through this section because I'm also running out of time. But basically, Larry Lessig has come up with Creative Commons, which is a real decentralized, user-centric way of licensing. It's really simple for people to find a license that suits their needs and apply it. And then, but the enforcing part is what people really need a lot of help with. So there's so much that's wrong with DRM. It breaks our interactions with content that we've already paid for, and it's a huge step backwards. In fact, CDs and cassette tapes are way more forward-thinking than MP3s in a lot of ways. But artists like Trent Reznor of the Nine Inch Nails and the Bare Naked Ladies in Canada are breaking out of this and offering new alternatives. So basically what Trent Reznor has done is published a lot of his files in a GarageBand format so that you can pull different streams of his music out and mash it up, and amazing things are happening. And I think he's really setting a stage for a new way to start to think about the distribution of music, where it is between the artist and the customer and the listener. Or actually the producer, the creator now. So evolution is an ongoing process, and for this section, I wanted to tell a kind of a laugh at the U.S. story here. The Paperwork Reduction Project, which is Project 15100056, and has thousands of people employed in it across the U.S. This burden estimate statement that is attached to another document that is attached to every document that goes out to U.S. contractors basically allows you to write a letter on paper and send it via U.S. postal mail to the U.S. government. So, you know, we had this opportunity to work with NASA, and so we were going through this, and we were thinking, whoa, is this for serious? You know, I don't know. We ended up just not deciding not to go for it. You know, I don't know where we would have ended up going, because from what I understand, we couldn't have gone with that process for the rest of our project anyways, because we're not very good with paperwork. Oh. Are we going to keep moving? Oh. So there you go. I just killed the dramatic impact. There we go. of everything. So number 8, cooperate, don't control. This is all about trust, right? So trust is the single hardest barrier for all of us to get over. Working in the open source industry has taught me a lot of things. It's based on the fact that human beings are basically good, and they're engaged, and they're smart, and they are engaged, and fucking engaged, as the Barcamp motto would have you say. But the government, I find, in many countries, is built on the premise that most human beings are basically bad or dumb or need to be watched at the very least. So are we naturally selfish, or is it the systems that encourage it? I met with one of my heroes last night, and Marilyn Waring, who's one of your own, and she said to me something that really struck me, and she said, trust is an externality. So I found this quote, which I think is really very poignant. And I'm not preaching for total anarchy here. I'm not saying that we should just open up the doors and let everybody flow in. But definitely there is some happy medium between total distrust and total complete trust that we have to achieve. And then, of course, number 9, the very last one, software above the level of a single device. And we all kind of know about this one. The same goes for citizen access. People need information on the go. So if you're accessing your health records via the web, why can't we access it via our cell phones? And we can make huge financial transactions where we're sending big amounts of money between our PDAs. Why can't we find out what our latest prescriptions are online? So that brings me to my last slide and my conclusion, which is imagining the possibilities. And I just came up with kind of an idea, a scenario, and feel free to rip it apart if you will. But what if there was a connected desktop app that every citizen who owned a computer could download? That would be their window into their information, connected to the government platform. It would be wikified so that we can append and correct it with recent changes screen, keeping track of the history, keeping all parties accountable. For those with personal computers, they could log into a secure website to access and change the information. It would be mobile compatible with data in-out capabilities. You could SMS your requests from your registered phone to get up-to-date information, or SMS your updates in. Service professionals with the right permissions could also log in to update. This same platform would have a series of APIs so that doctors' offices, schools, universities, researchers, community groups, local businesses, and anyone with an interest could build applications, mashups, and widgets that could use data for the long tail of citizen needs. The API key would be free and simple to access and governed by Creative Commons licensing. Everything built off the API would have to be licensed similarly, encouraging an overall culture of openness. That's it. Oh yeah, and I guess we have time for questions.
We don't have time for questions, but we will start with because I think some people might have some. So, please hang up if you've got a question.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, a bit more of a comment really, but we had a food camp here.
Yep.
2 months ago, we had 2 ministers crowned as politicians and an open speaker, and this was along with 120 invited people. Worked well.
Yeah, and I know about the food camp, and food camp rocks, but it still requires O'Reilly to run it. I want to see a citizen-run bar camp.
Any other questions?
I'm relentless. Right? Oh, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Before we get underway with the next speaker, we'll let the people at the back come down and take a seat. They'll be standing there for quite a while. That's what happens if you arrive late.